So I recently have taken it upon myself to do a little challenge and talk about something for 10 minutes, no cuts, no script, and just put it all out there. And I was thinking about like what should I do for my first video because I don't really know. And something that I've really been loving lately is reading. And so I thought I'd gather the books that have kind of in a way altered my brain chemistry for good, and just talk about them, because if there's one thing I can yap about, it's books. And so I've gathered a few of the books that I have really enjoyed these past few years. I think I want to say I've been reading for about 3 years now. Like, obviously I've been reading my whole entire life, but in terms of like as a hobby, I've been reading for about 3 years. So I don't know, these are just some of the books. I also have some that I read on my Kindle and some were borrowed copies. And yeah, so let's get started. The first one is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I'm not sure how to say the author's name. Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this story takes place in a coffee shop. And this coffee shop has the ability to transport you to any sort of moment in time. However, there are some rules to it, and one of them is you can't change anything, and you have to drink the coffee before it gets cold, hence the name Before the Coffee Gets Cold, in order to travel back in time. If not, you have to stay like in that specific spot. And so it follows the timeline of several different stories. It's been a while since I read this book, but it follows several different stories and how they in some way somehow interconnect with each other, but then also the different challenges between each of these stories and their traveling through time. And I really enjoyed this book. I really like books like this that sort of make you think about time, and in ways like regret and living in the moment and being present with each person. And so I thought it'd be fun to sort of give a little like quote that I highlighted, or a quote that I tabbed in some of the other books that I read, and just give you like a little insight into what part of it sort of like made me think differently about things. And so one of the quotes that I highlighted was this one. It says, "But Kazu still goes on believing that no matter what difficulties people face, they will always have the strength to overcome them. It just takes heart, and if the chair can change someone's heart, it clearly has its purpose." Also, I'm reading from my laptop, hence the looking down. And yeah, and it says like, if the chair can change someone's heart, it clearly has its purpose. And so I was reading the book, and in the beginning it talked about the rules, and one of them being like you can't change anything. And so I was like, okay, like, well, like, what's sort of the purpose of going back in time if you can't change anything? And then this quote hit me, and I was like, wow, yeah, like having the strength to overcome that, and then it just takes heart. And if the chair can change someone's heart, it clearly has its purpose. And that made me think of, there's so many things that we do, especially in the mundane things, that we kind of just go about like meandering in a way, and we don't realize in some cases that might be like the last time we ever do that, or something great happens like from that. And so just like your heart posture towards a certain situation or something, like either in the present, knowing now what you know then, or knowing what you know now and looking back then, or even like looking into the future and thinking like the grass is going to be greener on the other side, when like you can water the grass right now. So that just made me think of like regret, and how sometimes people get so stuck in like looking for the next thing that like you realize that you can change your heart posture now to realize that you've been living in what you were wishing for previously. Anyways, next is my absolute favorite book, Happy Place by Emily Henry. And this book got really popular on TikTok, and I, for the longest time, didn't read it because I was like, it's a book talk kind of book, and I don't know how much the hype is actually gonna reflect the actual book itself. And I think this book is one of my favorite books, but I can understand why it's not for a lot of people, because some people are like, it's overhyped, whatever. But I think what changed my brain chemistry with this is the way that books actually can like help you relate to something. And that's what this book did for me. I related to the main character and some of the other side characters in this book like no other book I've read before. And just like the friendship dynamics, and previously I moved here, and I had like a previous group of friends that I was really, really close to, and that in itself was like relatable in that way, and like holding on to like tradition and the way things used to be, that really like spoke to me through this book. But in other ways as well, like through the main character Harriet and her strive to be the best that she can be so that her parents don't have to worry about her, or like make her accomplishments be something that her parents are proud of so that she doesn't have to worry about, like, so that her parents don't have to worry. And just like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I could have ever related to a book character so much until I had read this book. And one of the quotes in here that I still think about like constantly, like it'll just pop into my mind, I'm like, wow, that's never really happened to me before. Let me see where I can start with this. Okay, I'll just say the quote. It says, a happy potter, like a person who does like ceramics, a happy potter is better for this world than a miserable surgeon. Like that was like mic drop, because I was like, wow, yeah, like how many people choose professions that they think are gonna be like admirable professions, like a surgeon, for example, or like a teacher, or I don't know, like an admirable profession when they don't really have the passion for it. But if you think about it, like a potter, a person who makes like plates, a person who makes cups, a person who makes like ceramics for decorations, like their job is just as purposeful in some other way. And so that just made me think about how, you know, like I would much rather have like a surgeon who is happy to be a surgeon than have like someone who isn't. I don't know how to articulate that better, but yeah, like a happy potter is better for this world than a miserable surgeon. That was just like mind-blowing to me. So love this book. And I will say, not everyone is gonna like it, because in some ways it is like a little cheesy little book, but I just related to it in ways that like I never thought I could relate to in a book, and for that it is one of my favorite books ever. Next, The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is also one of my more recent reads, actually, and it explores magical realism, which, first of all, I've never really read a book that deals with magical realism, and this being a romance book really like tied the knot for me, because I love romance books, but also they can be repetitive. But this one had like that inch of difference to it with the real magical side of it that made it not as repetitive and redundant. But this follows, I didn't even talk about what this follows. Anyways, we can talk about this one. This one follows a girl who is grieving the loss of her aunt that she was really close to, and this apartment that she inherited from her aunt is said to be magical, and apparently like it travels you in time. There's like a theme with time travel, hello. Anyways, it travels you in time, and she meets this guy, but she finds out he is from the future past, I forgot. And then they like hit it off. There's some chemistry there, but then they're sort of like battling this idea of like, okay, we are from different timelines. But yes, what I really liked about this book is that her grief is very like, I don't know, I've never, like, fortunately have never had to deal with, like, someone really, really close to me passing away, but I love the way that she depicted grief. There were so many, like, I want to say oxymorons in the way that she, like, described it. And yeah, let me see. Let me try to find a quote that, like, that really hits the spot. Okay, this one. Sometimes the people you loved left you halfway through a story. Sometimes they left you without a goodbye, and sometimes they stayed around in little ways. In the memory of a musical, in the smell of their perfume, in the sound of the rain, and the itch for adventure, and the yearning for that liminal space between one airport terminal and the next. I hated her for leaving, and I loved her for staying as long as she could, and I would never wish this pain on anyone. And then the other part gives a spoiler, but yeah, like, there's the mix of grief in there, and I just like the way that she depicted it. And also the guy in here, green flag, that also just, like, the ways that I, in a way, like, altered my brain chemistry, because I am just, like, a repetitive romance reader, guilty, but the magical realism did add a touch of, like, pizzazz to it. Anyways, love that book. I'm also sick, if you can't tell. Like, I sound like a teenage boy, but you know. Next book is The Hiding Place by Corey Ten Boom. This book, I want to read it again because I don't think I fully appreciated it for what it was when I read it. Corey Ten Boom, this is a autobiography? Regardless, it is about Corey Ten Boom. And it talks about the time during the Holocaust, and her family is hiding Jews in their little place, but then they get captured and put into concentration camps. They're put into concentration camps, and her family is Christian, and it just talks about her faith journey throughout this entire experience. And just the way that, first of all, I am not, like, a big history person. I think it's really interesting, but I'm not, like, gonna go out of my way to, like, go pick up a historical fiction or, like, a history book. And so when I was gifted this by one of the girls who led me in discipleship, she was like, this is my favorite book, like, you need to read it. I was worried because I was like, I don't want to say I don't like it, but I loved it because it was written in a way that was like, I forgot that it was a biography. Like, I forgot it was real and it actually happened, partly because of the way it was written. It was so beautifully written, but then second, it also was like, there were some things in here that, like, were clearly miracles from the Lord, and I was like, wow, that is, like, impossible. And then you have to remind yourself, like, this is real, like, this actually happened, and that was God doing a miracle. Because if it were like a fiction book, like, you could have been like, yeah, that happened, and you're like, yeah, you know, she just wrote that, but it happened, which makes it, like, wild because it's not fiction. I don't know if that was making any sense, but the miracles from God in here make you forget that it actually happened. Anyways, moving on to the quote because I yapped too much about this. I also didn't quote everything because I at some point had started reading it on my Kindle and forgot to highlight some things. Yes. The quote is, happiness isn't something that depends on our surroundings, Corey. It's something we make inside ourselves. And that was like, you know, because clearly they were not in, like, the most typical, like, picture perfect place to be happy in. Concentration. Anyways, and it reminded me of Paul when he was writing to the church in Philippi. I forgot. Anyways, he was writing about like the joy and the gratification that he has literally in prison, and so that just put into perspective. I realized this video is really long, and I'm like, I guess I can yap for a really long time. Anyways, there were still some books that some honorable mentions that I have read either as like a borrowed copy or on my Kindle. One being More Than a Carpenter. That one really talks about the more like evidential basis behind Christianity and how Jesus was a real person, and backs up him being the Messiah and the Son of God, which super cool. Very, very, very thin book, but dense read. It took me months to finish that book because I was just like, I would read a chapter, I'd read like 5 pages and I'd have to like absorb everything. So don't be discouraged that you're taking like 6 months to read like a book this thin. That book is very dense, but I really like the evidence base to it, which was super cool. It's about this guy who's like set out on like proving Christianity wrong, and then he like backtracked and was like, actually this is all the evidence for why it's correct. So that's really cool backstory to that. And then that's More Than a Carpenter by Josh McDowell, I think. And then the other one is Garden City by John Mark Comer, and that one is also really good. It talks about our biblical calling, just our callings as Christians vocation-wise, which I really appreciated. And it talks a lot about work and how we are called to work in the Bible, but in like a biblical sense, if that makes sense. Oh wow, okay. Anyways, so yes, that one is really good too. I want to reread it because I'm about to graduate college, and I read that like, I want to say halfway through my collegiate journey. But yeah, even like the title itself, Garden City, Work, Rest, and the Art of Being Human. And so there's like the work part of it that is super important. God calls us to it, but how do you determine that? And there are some really cool questions in there that make you ponder about like where God has you now, vocation-wise, work-wise, and if it's something that you are able to like, and it's something that you are able to glorify the Lord in, and are you doing that? And just things like that, how you can glorify God through your work. And yeah, he also has one that's called something Ruthless Elimination, the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is like basically the opposite. So there's like work and then there's Sabbath, and I need to read that one because that one's really important, just as important as working. So yes, anyways, those were the books that I would say made a pretty big impact in my life in like one way or another, some more than others. Obviously, another thing, hold on, the biggest mention, the Bible. Okay, read your Bible. It's super cool. I haven't been reading my Bible, like full transparency, I haven't been reading my Bible as consistently as I wanted to, but when I do read my Bible, there's like such a noticeable difference because I just feel better, and just the ways that like God encourages me and comforts me through his word makes a difference in a day. So definitely read the Bible. If you don't read anything out of these books, read the Bible. But yeah, this video is already 20 minutes long, so I guess I can yap, which is kind of surprising. I thought I'd be like nope, not once did I pause and think about what to say, so I guess I have more to say than I thought. So this might be easier than I thought. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy. Let me know if you have read any of these books, relate to them, have recommendations based off of these books, and I will see you again. Bye.